Hello, welcome to this module on the origin of human language, the important properties of languages, and the way human language is distinguished from other systems of animal communication. The origin of human language is related to the evolutionary process of human development. This is believed to have happened about 70,000 to 1 lakh years ago. Scientists say that it was the necessity to perform complicated hunting tasks that led to the origin of the human language as we find it today. The complex system of communication which we call language. It happened during the beginning of the last ice age, which was roughly 70,000 to 1 lakh years ago. So the ice age meant that vegetation would be almost completely decimated over a large area. There was very little vegetation to find, and as a result, the animals who fed on vegetation also became scarce. There were few animals to hunt, and as a result of which, those animals which were left, especially the large fauna, megafauna as it was called, large animals like bison, uh, lions, those large animals uh, existed in smaller numbers. And if you wanted to hunt them down, you required a very sophisticated form of communication, a sophisticated system of communication. The members of the hunting pack had to be told. They had to tell each other about a number of things as they hunted. The footprints, the way the animal uh, headed, the footprints of what the footprints of the animals indicated, its size, all kinds of things about the animal, which the members of the hunting pack had to communicate to one another. Spencer Wells, a genetist by training, but who also developed a keen interest in language, went to live with the San Bushmen who lived near the Kalahari Desert in Africa to observe their ways of living. He was primarily interested in one thing, the hunting patterns of this tribe, how they could track down animals, megafauna, in fact, large animals which were very scarce in the area where they lived. So he lived with them for a long time. In fact, he was also trying out another theory of his, of what he called the African origin of Homo sapiens, the entire race of humans which have filled the world today. So he was trying to explore the theory they had all come from Africa, and that these San Bushmen who lived near the Kalahari Desert were the direct descendants of the original tribe who chose to stay behind rather than migrate out of Africa. So he observed their hunting habits. He observed the language that these people spoke, and he found a very interesting thing about this language. This language had what are called clicks, sounds which are made by inhaling, uh, by drawing in our breath rather than pushing it out, as we generally do in speaking our language, for instance. So you have sounds like etc. in the language of the San Bushmen. So this kind of clicks do not exist in any other language of the world. So linguists say this is quite normal in the evolution of language. So that is a particular property which a language possesses is lost when it evolves. So the fact that only this particular language possesses these clicks and no other language on earth does would indicate that this is probably the language from which all the other languages originated. Plus, of course, the large number of sounds which this language possesses. Okay, so this is one hypothesis of Wells's, which is still being investigated: the African origin of all human languages. Okay, he was trying to explore this idea. Okay, and the other idea that all human beings are descended from the same tribe in Africa, which migrated out of the continent 70,000 to 1 lakh years ago, is now widely accepted, because blood tests of samples of populations, all the major populations of the world, undoubtedly indicated that all human beings, the Homo sapiens as a race, has the same origin. And Spencer Wells's research on the way in which human beings evolve and develop traits as they evolve, which are different from their ancestors, also have been widely accepted now. Okay. Now, if this theory is accepted, if the theory that all languages originated from the same language, all languages originated from the what we can call the proto-language, which was spoken in Africa 70,000 to 1 lakh years ago, this becomes a very important piece of information, scientific knowledge, which would world promote understanding between the peoples of the world, which would reiterate the need for a new kind of international relations. So if language developed out of the necessity to carry out complex hunting tasks, one can also look at the way it would have developed rapidly as the first tribe migrated out of Africa. They were encountering new terrains. According to Wells's theory, most of these populations, most of these migrating hordes, first walked through what we call the coastal highways along the coast. And in many areas, sea levels were very low, and they could fish and hunt for sea animals, which were, as it is said, plenty along the way. So their complex task of hunting for food continued all along the way. So if the origin of language came from such a necessity, its immediate further development also came from such a necessity. So which can well account for the complexity of languages as they exist today. Noam Chomsky, one of the most accomplished linguists of our time, in fact, known to be the father of transformational generative grammar, of course, did not know about this theory of Wells's, that all languages originated from the same proto-language. But of course, he knew, or he formulated the idea that there are properties which are common to all languages. Not surprising if we accept Spencer Wells's idea of a common origin for all languages. But Chomsky called this universal language. Chomsky talked about the properties which are common to all languages. And he also talked about the language being a biological endowment. That is, it is inherited from our ancestors, it's inherited from our parents. Language is already programmed in the brain. Okay, and the basic property of language, what is called its syntax, is already programmed in the brain. So what we have to do when we learn a language, when we learn the language of a parent, for example, when we learn the language spoken by a parent, what we are doing is to apply the syntactic rules of the language, the grammatical rules of the language, which are programmed in the brain, by putting together words which we have learned outside, which we have learned after birth, which we have learned from our surroundings. So we learn the lexis or the vocabulary of Malayalam, Hindi, Tamil, English, whatever is spoken in our uh, environment, and then we put these words together into meaningful sentences using the grammatical rules, the rules of syntax, which are programmed in our brain. So all the possibilities of language are there in our brain. So what we are doing when we speak Malayalam is to switch on one of these possibilities. So we speak Malayalam, Tamil, or Hindi. So this theory of language, what is called the rationalist theory of language. Language already exists in the brain. It is not empirically acquired. It is not acquired from experience. Only the vocabulary of a language is acquired from empirical experience. The structure is already there. Till recently, linguists used to talk about language families in a more or less conventional way, relying upon empirical evidence. The way languages appear to be related to one another. So conventionally, we used to talk about 12 to 15 families, language families of the world, which was conventionally accepted. And in some cases, there were groupings which were not very clearly demarcated. For example, we talk about the Semitic Hamitic group, two branches of the same family. It's a Semitic group of languages including Arabic and Hebrew, and the Hamitic group, which includes languages which are spoken in North Africa, in Egypt, Algeria, Libya, etc. So which would indicate that the families, at least some families, could not be clearly separated. But a linguist called Joseph Greenberg, for example, who investigated language families a little more deeply, found that in fact the number of families could be reduced to just 4 or 5. Large mega families could be discovered. So all these are discoveries, all these are findings which were made without the knowledge about the common origin of humanity, or the common origin of human language being available. But these are important, valid generalizations, valid observations, which are now almost on the verge of being widely accepted on the basis of genetic evidence. On the basis of evidence that, after all, we are the same people. All human beings in the world are from the same stock. Alright, if we developed language, why didn't other animals develop language? Especially, at least, animals like chimpanzees, who are only a little less intelligent than us. But why didn't they? Why didn't they develop language? Although their intelligence is comparable with human intelligence, why didn't they do it? So some scientists say, and they used to say this for a long time, that their organs are not adapted for the articulation of sounds. They cannot work their lips or teeth or tongue the way we do to articulate uh, sounds. While this explanation is acceptable, a more, let us say, uh, probable or a more scientific explanation is now doing its rounds. That is, even the higher primates, the apes, lack what is called the short term memory, which is required to produce complex sentences. It is something like this. If you are uttering a long winded sentence, a complex sentence in which there are a number of turns, complexities, you have to keep in your memory the first part of the sentence when you reach the end of the sentence. Only then the connection can be maintained. So let us look at sentences like this. I am talking about the students of this class. I believe that all the students of this class have some kind of personality. Okay, this is one complex sentence, but you can have even more complex sentences, such as although I believe that all students of this class have some personality, I'm not sure about the way this personality works out or whether this is clearly coordinated with the levels of intelligence which they are shown exhibiting. Okay, look at the sentence. Look at the turns taken by this sentence, how complex it is. Now, this kind of short-term memory, the kind of short-term memory required to produce such a sentence is lacking in higher primates. What we generally call, what we comparable to what we call random access memory in computers, RAM. So the higher animals, the primates, the apes lack this short-term memory, which is why you can try it out with any sentence that you use in English or Malayalam or whatever language you speak. Something like this, for example. ഈ ക്ലാസ്സിലെ എല്ലാ വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളും സൗന്ദര്യത്തിൻ്റെ കാര്യത്തിൽ ഒന്നിനൊന്ന് മത്സരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിലും ബുദ്ധിയുടെ കാര്യത്തിൽ എങ്ങനെ മത്സരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ എന്നുള്ളത് കൃത്യമായി ഇനിയും തെളിയിക്കപ്പെടേണ്ടതായിട്ടുള്ളതാണെന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു. Alright. So this is a more plausible reason why the higher animals, the primates, did not develop language. That they did not have, they just did not have the uh, brain power to develop the language. And probably you know that there are specialized areas in the brain which looks after language. As you learn more about language production, you'll certainly learn more about it. For instance, that damage to particular parts of the brain. For example, there are two areas in the brain which are called Broca's area and Wernicke's area, which are directly related to the use of language. So if anything happens to these areas, say after when you have an accident, if you suffer some damage, if your brain suffers some damage in these areas, the production and the understanding of language can be seriously impaired. So this this results in linguistic disorders like aphasia, whereby you don't remember the names of objects, you cannot put together meaningful sentences, etc. Well, what this means is that the brain has specialized itself in the use of language. Certain areas of the brain have specialized themselves in the use of language. Okay, so we have been looking at let us say, we are almost sure about it, but say from the scientist's point of view, it's still a hypothesis which is being proved. In any case, conventional linguists conventional linguistics looked at the origin of language in many different ways. About the possible reasons for the or possible let us say procedures for the origin of language. Let's look at some of them. One such theory is the theory of imitation of natural sounds. Because some linguists say or said that language originated from imitation of natural sounds, the sounds that you hear around you, sounds that you hear in nature, sounds that animals and birds make, the sound of a river flowing, the sound of a waterfall, the sound of thunder, all kinds of things that you hear around you, and you try to imitate them, and then you form some kind of word. Uh, you put together sounds to form such sounds to form a word, and then this word in the at least in the beginning indicates the object or the phenomenon which you have observed. So there are a number of words in almost all languages of the world which indicate such natural sounds. So when you use a word like bang, okay, it is an imitation of a gun going off, okay. Or when you say boom, it's an imitation of thunder. When you say splash, it's an imitation of something falling into water. Hiss is the kind of sound which a snake, for example, makes. A number of other sounds. Number of sounds which are called onomatopoeic, meaning the sound, the word imitating the actual sound. So this is one theory about the origin of language. Although we know that not many words of this kind exist in language, or even if the first words were imitations of natural sounds, they have changed over long years, over thousands of years, and so they are no longer onomatopoeic. But this was one theory that language originated from imitation of natural sounds, sounds that you hear around you. This is one theory. Okay. Now the second theory is about the social interaction theory. We have already had a look at when we talked about hunting packs, hunting tribes, requiring language, requiring complex language for their tasks. So the linguists, conventional linguists used to call this theory social interaction theory, which means they also used to call it yo he ho theory, the sounds that you make when you work. Okay, so naturally, when human beings work together, when they interact with each other, when there's a group work, they do need language. This can be taken as another theory, another fundamental theory on the origin of language. Then you have a theory like the physical adaptation theory. The physical adaptation theory would indicate the kind of development of language in tune with the physical evolution of human beings, walking on 2 feet instead of 4, using your mouth, your lips, your teeth, your tongue to articulate sounds. I mean, the kind of development which parallels the physical development of human beings, physical evolution of human beings. One can also talk about the tool making source, just as we talked about the talked about hunting tribes developing complex language due to the necessity of such a communication system for their tasks at hand. So similarly, tool making is a complex task which requires a complex system of communication, and language fits the bill, as we know. Right. One can also think of the sounds which people make in moments of emotion, or pain or joy also developing into sentences, proper sentences, into words and sentences. So these are the various ways in which conventional linguistics believed that language originated. Hello, welcome back. Now, let's have a look at some of the chief properties of language and how human language differs from other systems of communication. By other systems, I mean the animal systems of communication. Now, right at the outset, I would like to make one thing clear. When we say that human language differs from animal systems of communication, we are looking at it in a relative way. I mean to say that many animal systems of communication come a little close to human language, especially the communication systems of higher animals like apes. So perhaps the difference is one of degree rather than kind. But as we now find human language and other animal systems of communication, the difference seems to be almost absolute. There seems to be a barrier between the two. So, in any case, let's look at some of the properties of human language. So, one of the first things that strike people who study, who look at human language from outside, objectively, is that human language exhibits the property called displacement. By displacement, I mean the ability to talk about another time and place. I mean the time and place, at a time and place other than those in which the communicative act takes place. For example, I'm in a classroom now, and but I can talk about what is happening at home or what happened at home yesterday, what happened in the campus yesterday, what is going to happen in my town next week. So I can talk about the past, the present, and the future. Animal systems of communication are generally considered uh, unable to perform this important function. But here again, there are some scientists who say that among apes, there are cries which indicate uh, events which have already taken place, such as the arrival of an enemy in the camp, the arrival of an eagle to peck at young apes, and so on. But such things are still at the speculative stage. So we are not sure which that is exactly what's happening. But in any case, it's only in human language that you find a full-blown displacement. You can talk about the past and the future. You can talk about the here and the hereafter and the past. The second important property of human language is arbitrariness, which means the relationship between linguistic forms and the objects or events they refer to is arbitrary. For instance, in English, the word dog stands for a particular animal. In Arabic, the animal is referred to by the word kalbun. So these two words refer to the same animal, but they don't sound alike. They have different sounds. So although there are some onomatopoeic words, I have already referred to that, words which the sounds of which indicate the objects or the events they refer to. Generally, this property is more or less very rare in human language. In other words, the human language is generally not onomatopoeic, although onomatopoeia is considered to be one of the ways in which human language originated. The third important characteristic of human language is productivity. the capacity of humans to continually create new expressions and utterances to describe new objects and situations, which means that the number of possible utterances or sentences in any human language is infinite, which means you can produce an infinite number of sentences. Language is open ended rather than closed. In contrast, animal systems of communication do not have such an abundance of signals. The number of signals which uh, animal systems of communication has is rather limited. Although research seems to have established that uh, in some higher animals, especially apes, the uh, communication system shows some signs of developing. In other words, new kinds of cries are developing among bands of apes. But this is also at the speculative stage, and compared to the productivity of human language, such animal systems are still very inadequate and uh, very little productive. The animal systems of communication can generally generate only a few messages. The worker bees signals, for example, can indicate only two things. One, the distance at which the source of honey can be located, and the quality of the honey, and of course the direction in which the honey can be, in which other bees can follow to uh, locate and to procure honey. Closely allied to the property which we call productivity is redundancy. Redundancy would mean that human language generally produces a large number of signals, all elements of which are not necessary for making meaning. In other words, not all the elements are relevant for the purpose of communicating a message. So some of these elements relate to what is generally called phaetic communion, Phaetic communion, which means they are intended to create a social bonding between the speaker and the listener, between the addresser and the addressee. They call acts of phaetic communion, such as what we generally call greetings. When you say good morning, or when you say thank you, such messages are not generally intended, strictly speaking, to convey information. The other aspect of what we call redundancy is that a large number of elements used in any communication are strictly speaking not necessary. And the communicative act also involves such things like pauses, repetitions, etc., which are not required in the act of communication, which is why we call that much of human communication is, much of human language is redundant. You don't need to say so many things. You don't need so much time to say the things that you wanted to say. As we have already seen, uh, much of language is wired into the brain. It's innate. It's a biological endowment, what you get by way of legacy from your parents, from your ancestors. But this wired language is mostly the structure of the language, structural properties of the language, which are wired into your brain, which you have inherited from your ancestors. The language as it is actually spoken, the vocabulary of the language, its idioms, its multiple varied expressions, colorful expressions are all things that you acquire after you are born. What you acquire from your environment, from the people who speak the language in your surroundings. So, which is why we say that language is transmitted culturally. I mean, this part of language, the lexis or the vocabulary of language, the actual words which are uh, used in speaking the language are culturally transmitted, passed on uh, from one uh, speaker to another, passed on in uh, a society, in a social setting, which is how we acquire our language in childhood. Another important property of human language is duality. This is, of course, definitely uh, a property of human language which no other animal systems of communication possess. This is called duality or double articulation, which means human beings can articulate or express language in two ways. One, at the level of speech, the other at the level of writing. Another property of human language is its self-reflexivity. You can talk about the language in which you are conversing. You can talk about English while you are talking English. So this property again sharply separates human language from animal systems of communication. So we have now looked at some of the important properties of human language and how human language differs from other systems of communication, I mean animal systems of communication. Now let's have a look at how languages have spread across the globe. How what we saw was one language. If you accept Spencer Wells' thesis, split up into more than 7,000 languages as they are found in the world today. So these languages have been grouped into families. Traditionally, we have around 12 to 15 families of languages in the world. And there are linguists like uh, Joseph Greenberg who would like to reduce the number of families to say 4 or 5. You have just 4 or 5 major language families in the world. Okay. Now these groupings, this classification is made on the basis of genetic uh, affinity between languages. Okay. So we say that Malayalam and Tamil belongs to the same family, or that Hindi and Bangla belongs to the same family, or in a wider sense that Hindi and English belong to the same large family called Indo-European family of languages. But apart from genetic similarity, genetic affinity, there are other ways in which languages can be classified. For instance, languages can be classified on the basis of what is called typological relationship or typological similarity. Two languages which are genetically quite far apart can still exhibit structural properties which make them quite similar. So these structural properties include such phenomenon like the same word order, for example. If two languages have the same SVO structure or the SOV structure, we can say that typologically, at least as far as word order is concerned, these two languages can be put together. So genetic relationship and typological relationship can be quite different. For instance, Hindi, which is basically an Indo-European language, has the same word order as Malayalam, which is a Dravidian language. Both have the SOV system, whereas English, which is genetically related to Hindi, follows a different word order, SVO. Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada, three Dravidian languages, have grammatical gender, but Malayalam doesn't, although it also belongs to the Dravidian family of languages. Hindi has grammatical gender, but Hindi belongs to the Indo-European family of languages. So, two unrelated languages, Hindi and Tamil, have the same system of grammatical gender. Languages can also be typologically related to each other in other properties like stress or intonation. English is a stress-timed language. Malayalam is a syllable-timed language. French is also largely a syllable-timed language. Apart from genetic and typological relationships, languages can also be related culturally. Two languages can be quite unrelated genetically, comparatively unrelated genetically, but they may be spoken in the same cultural environment and therefore they may exhibit, at least on the surface, a number of similarities. Few people would have heard of a Dravidian language called Brahui, yet it is the language of more than 2.5 million people living in the border areas of Afghanistan and Pakistan. As a Dravidian language, it has no other genetically related language in its environment. It is surrounded by Indo-European languages, especially Urdu, Pashto, and other related languages. So culturally, Brahui shows great affinity to these languages rather than to its genetically related languages towards the south, like Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil, or Kannada. Similarly, Magyar, a language spoken in Hungary in Eastern Europe, is genetically unrelated to its neighbors. It's not an Indo-European language. It's believed to belong to a family called Finno-Ugric. Yet, Magyar is culturally quite close to the other Slavic languages which surround it in Eastern Europe. So we have found that languages can be related in three major ways: typologically, genetically, and culturally. With this, we come to the end of the first module in linguistics. Thank you.